Gentlemen, we are live February 20th, episode 5 of This Week in Baseball Across Indiana. Fellas, we got a good one. I'll tell you what, this is our first show where we're covering live baseball. So you fans watching here, as you chime in, hang with us here. We're new broadcasters. We are new commentators covering the scene here as far as this format anyway. We've got, Jeff and Steve especially have been covering it forever, and Steve could cover baseball in his sleep. But, I think, though, it's fair to say that if anybody's going to make an error, it's me. So you other three, I think you're in a safe position. Before we get started, let's hear about and let's talk to our intro guest for the week, Drew Ellis.
What's up, guys? This is Drew Ellis, Jeffersonville High School Red Devil, class of 2014, drafted by the Arizona Diamondbacks, current third baseman in 2017. And welcome to This Week in Baseball Across Indiana.
That was Drew Ellis, guys. Steve and I got to talk to him earlier in the week. Great athlete, of course, from Jeffersonville. We told him that he was born in Louisville, and of course he went to high school at Jeffersonville. Then he went to college in Louisville, and I told him, I might get in trouble for this, but I told him, I said, Drew, Louisville's an Indiana school. I mean, that's farther north than Evansville, so we've adopted Louisville. Of course, I had to say that because they steal our players all the time. We've got some good ones going down there. But great, just another one of those players that came out of the Jeffersonville, New Albany area that they're just loaded with, I tell you what. And so we were happy to have him on. And I'm going to fast forward. We don't need to hear him again. Let's go around the horn here a little bit, fellas. And before we start talking about scores, let's just talk about what's going on in your baseball world and your what happened this week. Let's on my screen, Jeffrey, you're on the top left there. What do you got going on this week, and what do you got going on going forward? I know you've been talking to some umpires.
Yeah, we talking to some umpires, trying to get them lined up regarding talking a little bit about their careers, and then kind of helping the IHSA out a little bit to recruit some umpires. Also been working on contacting some coaches and athletic directors at the high school level to get some career records for their schools. As an example, I talked to Coach Luce at Wapahani last night. Basketball game. I was on a video cast there, and talked to Matt Luce. He's the AD of Wapahani, and he's going to help me out getting their win-loss record and coach's name back to when the IHSA recognized baseball with a 66-67 season. So I'll be sending some emails out to some coaches and also some ADs to get those records up on Max Preps, and I'm finalizing my video for talk directly to the coaches about entering statistics. So that's what I've been working on this week.
I'll tell you what, that is a big deal. As we've been, slowly compiling stuff to put on our website, I think the big issue, and Jeff, you would know more about this than anybody, is just getting everything up to date. With technology the way it is now, there's no reason why you can't, easily have current stuff and going forward maintain your statistics on things like Max Preps. But man, that backfilling all the historical data, Jeff, I mean, that's like I don't even know what to compare that to.
Well, it's like pulling teeth somewhat, because if somebody wrote something down, especially at baseball, Dan, they wrote it down in a scorebook. And what happens to those scorebooks after the season, or when the coach leaves the school, or when he retires, etc.? A number of things can happen. The coach who's leaving the school may leave the scorebooks in the athletic department. He may take the scorebooks with him. They may be in a box in a closet somewhere in the school somewhere. And the way, and not putting newspapers down, but the way things are going with newspapers, everything's being, we're going to gather scores on Twitter. We're going to gather scores on Facebook, correct? I mean, newspapers are going to the wayside. And if you have to go back, Dan, if it's not posted by a writer, Steve Crawl, if it's not written down by a writer like Steve Crawl in a newspaper, and that baseball scorebook is not around, it is really like pulling teeth, because you may have to go to the coach, you may have to go to former players and say, hey, did you keep a scrapbook of your season, 1975, 76, et cetera? So it's really a difficult challenge, but I like the the research and getting on, not to promote our website, but newspapers.com, to go in and find some of that stuff. You really get excited when you find something you didn't think you'd find. That sometimes you kind of run around and then run into a rabbit hole, but you get yourself out and find something else. So it's difficult, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a challenge for me. And I look forward to trying, hopefully, one of these shows down the road saying, hey, Dan, hey, Steve, hey, Chris, hey, Mark, I've got this project complete. So we'll go from there.
Well, that is that's a daunting task. And I'll tell you, that kind of goes right in line. Jeff, you and Steve were with us for the recording of the last thing we're going to do on today's show, which we got a chance to talk to some great authors. And they were saying the same thing that Jeff was just saying. It's, looking up the newspapers and just the research aspect, because they're writing, one of the words they said a lot was, the books we're writing about, we're dealing with dead people, so, there's not a lot of firsthand research right there. So they're going back, and it's a daunting task, but I can't imagine, with almost 400 schools in Indiana and all the historical records, scorebooks that got cobwebs on them from who knows when, and compiling all that, man, I tell you what, that is people like me are hopefully going to show you how awesome that is as you move forward with it, because I'm the person that gets to enjoy it. You're the one doing all the legwork for it. But, that I kind of hinted at what we're going to end the show with. Let's go to you, Steve. We've talked to a lot of people this week, and if Steve wasn't busy enough interviewing all the people that he interviews, then here comes this Hardy guy telling him to line up some more. But you, man alive, I think it's you're loving what you're doing, Steve. You talked to a lot of people. Tell me who you've talked to this week, and who you got going forward.
Oh, we lined up a bunch of umpires. We're going to have an umpire panel coming up here pretty soon. We're going to record that this week, so I'm looking forward to that. Couple of guys I'm going to reach out to, kind of doubling back to them. I'm going to write about Ryan Foster, who's from Danville. His brother is the head coach, Ty Foster, head coach at Cascade, and Ryan, his older brother, he coaches in Missouri, the JUCO. They were getting ready to leave town, so he said to get back a hold of him Monday, Tuesday. I found something out that I didn't know. I reached out to Greg Vogt. Greg Vogt's from Carmel, played at Anderson University, and he started PRP baseball in Noblesville. And he's got people coming all over the country really to work out with him. Well, the Toronto Blue Jays hired him as their rehab to run their pitching rehab program, and he's moved to Florida with his family.
Yeah, well, so I saw that this week. I mean,
I'm going to catch up with him. Yeah.
Hey, he's one of those movers and shakers in the baseball industry in Indiana.
Right. I think you could. Did they headhunt him? I bet they did.
Yeah.
Because he's good at what he does, and people take notice of that. Also, I hope to talk to Josh Brock, who is on the Manchester staff. I got to talk to him at the Sluggers.
Somebody's watching a baseball show.
Okay. Yeah. I saw him at the Sluggers Coaches Clinic a couple of weeks ago, and I made a contact with him. So I hope to talk with him this week. That's a couple of things early in the week.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
I never asked you guys, Chris, before we come to you. Did you see the hat I got on there? That's kind of the theme of our show ending. I wanted to find a fictitious team. Since we're talking about books and some of them are fiction books related to baseball, I'm going to let you figure that one out, and I'll tell you when we get to the book section, unless anybody knows the answer now. Chris, let's go to you. And they're starting some baseball. Not a lot around you yet, but what do you got going on?
Well, I've been busy still rehabbing from my recent surgery, but like you, I also wore a hat,
Nice.
Omaha, for the college preview show because that's one of the coolest things I've done. Was I happened to be in Omaha in 2013 when Indiana was there, and that was awesome. But I hate to sound like a homer, but today marks the 26th year since Wabash's Chris Rude passed away.
Oh.
So 26 years ago today would have been the first day of baseball practice in Indiana when he passed away, which just, I get everything, obviously, Wabash, Twitter, and that was tweeted out today. But to go along with something we talked about earlier is when he passed away, all the records that Wabash had, which would have been substantial, disappeared with him because he hated individual honors.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
He only liked to celebrate team honors. So at Wabash High School, with the storied baseball history, we only have a few records from back in his time, and those are only because they were state records and are still in the state record book.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have those, because when he died, all the records died with him. And so that kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier. It's just tough to do. And then if you think about records of teams that don't exist anymore or schools that don't exist anymore, I mean, that's another hurdle to try to climb to get all these historic things, which I think would be great. But to me, I think that's just going to be a next to impossible task.
I'll tell you what, the records where I said a few years ago, once I finished the high school hat project, that I was going to start a lifelong endeavor to collect hats from schools that don't exist anymore. And I'm talking about just getting a hat. I'm not talking about years of records in a handwritten record book. So yeah, that's and Coach Rude was, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm so glad you had him as part of, the people we talked about on that history in Indiana, because he's one of the good ones. And I love the fact of what you said about him is why he was one of the good ones. I mean, he wasn't about individual honors and things like that. And you'll find that these high school coaches and college coaches across the state, matter of fact, Coach Reel from IU Southeast, who, by the way, since we're talking about college scores and everything this week, he became the all-time winningest coach at IU Southeast this week. But going back to what I was saying, had a little squirrel moment there. He said the same thing as of what you were talking about with Coach Rude, which is, individual honors don't mean anything. And, Coach Reel got all those honors a few years back. How many times has he got the NAIA Coach of the Year for the region and the Conference Coach of the Year and things like that? And he said, those things don't mean squat to me. And that's good coaches. That's how they are. So, absolutely love it. So let's move along before we get to the book special. We're going to start that in about 15 minutes. It's about a 30 minutes. So, folks, finally, I think we're going to be able to have a show that lasts right at an hour, because I don't have a chance to talk. I think that's why this show's going to work. As we look at the college scene from this week, we got D1 through JUCO, D1, D2, D3, and JUCO. I'm going to open it up here a little bit, but I wanted to go through. I compiled some things for the D1 scene I thought we could talk about first. Let's look at the Big Ten first. Can you guys see that on your screen there? Big Ten standings, first of all, it's early. So, obviously this means nothing. Indiana 0-2. How'd they do today? Someone going to fill me in on that?
They got beat in extra innings, 4-3.
4-3. They got some big games coming up, and we'll talk about those here in a second. But Purdue starting out 3-0. They played today too. I think they played today too, right? Does anybody have the score of that off the top of your head? I'm going to look that up real quick. We'll
They
get back.
beat South Dakota State 10-7. They swept the 4-game series.
So
yeah, they're 4-0 right now.
They're 4-0 right now. Purdue's 4-0. Very nice. I don't know how Iowa and Maryland did, but a college season preview show when we had Ryan Brownlee and Mike Rooney on the show, they said it. They said Coach Goff. He said that guy is someone you're going to want on your radar. Early in the season, I'm giving fan applause here, but wanted to show this out. Obviously, it's too early to talk about hits and everything like that, but it's never too early to talk big flies. And Paul Totes there of Purdue already got 2 of them. One of the only 3. And it's never too early to talk strikeouts. And we had some good outings here. I just want to go through these real quick. Jack Perkins had 8. In his debut, and Landon Weens had 7. And it was good to see Reese Sharp's name again. We haven't seen his name. He finally got his debut. That was Reese Sharp was, for University High School. What was it, 2 years ago? And he finally had his debut with 7 strikeouts for IU. So
and he came in. He was lights out when he came in. I think he had 5 strikeouts in a row when he came in relief at one point.
Well, he has the I guess what do you want to call it, the modern day, or since IHSAA went to the class system, he has the record for most strikeouts in the state championship. What did he have? I think he had 17 strikeouts versus what was that, 2019, I believe it was. And they were playing Washington Township, was when University was in 1A, and he had 17 strikeouts in the final for University. He was a transfer. I think he did his freshman and sophomore, maybe junior year at Fishers, and then transferred his senior year. It's kind of a neat story. Transferred his senior year to University, and he had to sit out most of the season because of the transfer rule. And he comes in the playoffs, and he's unheard of, and he just goes lights out in the playoffs. So, University comes out with this secret weapon in the playoffs of 2019, and they pretty much ran the gamut. Some notable upcoming games. IU's had a good schedule so far, but I'm looking forward to this next Saturday. Minnesota and ISU are playing down in Florida. And then Sunday, IU's in that Round Rock Classic down in Texas, and that's next Sunday at 1:00. So I'll be watching that before next Sunday's show, and they line up against Stanford. Pretty good showing they got there. Let's go through some ACC standings real quick. Again, not a lot going on. I'll go through these kind of quick, but I did want to spotlight, Notre Dame starting out 2-1. Too early to give anything rankings. They haven't even played any conference games yet. Here's their last week. I think they, Delaware is, that's why I love baseball. In any other sport, is Delaware significant? No. But in baseball, everybody's significant. You look at that first game versus Manhattan, they handled their business with a 15-run win. And then the next game, they only win by 2 versus Stetson. So, these opponents, you look at these are 6, these guys in basketball, if you put it in the basketball perspective, these people, this Manhattan, Stetson, and Delaware, might get in as a 16 seed every few years and then get blanked by a number 1 seed. But in baseball, it doesn't matter. And that's why, baseball is such a great game. Notre Dame upcoming, they got Monmouth coming up. And then Marist. I don't know anything about either of these 2 teams, but that's next week's schedule for Notre Dame. Looking at the MAC real quick, not a lot going on here as well, but I wanted to highlight on Ball State for a couple things. They start out 2-2 with a win over Bucknell, and they lost pretty good to Iowa. and Air Force, two big teams, but then come back and beat Army 10-6. Those are big name teams to start out the year for Ball State. We do want to highlight a Griffith grad here, Amir Wright. He's 5 for 15 starting out the season, 333, and gets tough competition. So we want to keep an eye on him. Steve, yes, you there in the front row, raising your hand. Go ahead, Steve. I know you had something to say about this. Go ahead.
Hunter Dobbins, All-Star last year, Mount Vernon, Fortville, hit 2 home runs against Bucknell. So that's 2 dingers in his first collegiate game.
I'll tell you what, we need to talk about that for a second, because that dude, he started out in 2021, and I thought he was going to break. I've said this on other shows. Hunter Dobbins, you got to keep that guy on your radar. He started out 2021 with Mount Vernon, Fortville there, like Steve said, the Marauders, just on fire. I mean, the path he was on, we thought he was going to break every home run record in the state. And then he came down to reality. He didn't he didn't have a bad season. He just came down to reality a little bit off that cloud. So that was a good point there, Steve, because that guy, he's got it going on, and he's someone you want to keep on your radar for sure. Moving on, Ball State, here's their upcoming schedule. Kind of they're spending some time in the South like everybody else, and they're not home yet, but I'm looking forward to them coming home because
and those are good baseball teams they're playing.
Yes, sir, they are. Middle Tennessee, Coastal Carolina, North Carolina. Is that Western? Wilmington. Yes, and we know a guy. There's an Indiana tie to North Carolina and Wilmington. I thought they might know that off the top of their head. I don't have to look that up. The Moval, one of my favorite conferences right here. Boy, Evansville had it tough. You'll see here in a second. Their schedule just starts out absolutely brutal. Indiana State 2-1 there. Valpo is 1-2. Evansville's 0-3. Let's look at some of these scores here. The ones I wanted to highlight. Of course, Valpo loses to Memphis, which is traditionally a good team. Then Evansville goes out and starts their season versus North Carolina State. 6-4, not too bad. Then Jeff was talking about this earlier. How many when they lost that second game? I'm looking for here, 24-6. Tell us about that game, Jeff?
Well, their opponent scored 19 consecutive runs. I mean, 19. That's a lot of dings on the baseball.
Yeah, and they don't have it easy coming up either. We'll talk. I'm going to show you that here just in a second. But ISU starts out against the Buckeyes of Ohio State, and gave them a game. Arkansas 5, Illinois State 1. But then you go to the one I want to highlight, that second from the bottom there, Illinois State 3, Arkansas 2. That's huge, folks. Arkansas is the real deal this year, and you got to and that just tells you how good the Missouri Valley is. And, echoing again what Ryan Brownlee said last week, and he knows the Missouri Valley as well as anyone in the country. And Missouri Valley is putting people in the bigs every year like nobody's, as good as any mid-major conference in the country. So, that just goes to show. Indiana State 3-2 over BYU. BYU is also not a slouch this year. They're a team to watch, and Indiana State beat them. So, some good scores here. I was surprised that, Dallas Baptist, I think they had 1 loss or 2. 2. Southeast Missouri, is that who they were playing? Southeast Missouri State. 2 home games, and they lost. But early in the season, that's just me, a Missouri Valley fan. Here's a couple big games coming up for the Moval. Of course, that bottom one I talked about, Minnesota and Indiana State. But here's what I was talking about with Evansville, not taking it easy. They go from North Carolina State to Vandy. So that's brutal right there. That is just absolutely brutal.
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, and I think that's what you said when we were talking down there to them. Big East, Butler's 0-3, still early in the season. Competitive conference. I just wanted to throw out the standings on there real quick. I mentioned, I've got D2 through the rest of them here. But I want to back up. The D2, I didn't have a lot of scores on, so let me bring it back to our panel here on the screen. And let's talk about that. The D2. I know Purdue Northwest didn't have any games so yet. I think their first home game is coming up in March. Anything else going on in the D2 scene, guys?
UIndy and Southern Indiana both got off the 3-0 starts.
Nice.
UIndy, Indianapolis, the Greyhounds, they beat Notre Dame of Ohio 5-0, 15-14, one of those football scores, and 13-3. I know that Drew Donaldson had 3 RBIs in game 2 and 4 in game 3. Alex Vela had 4 runs scored in game 2. He's a Cardinal Ritter grad.
Yeah, I knew that name sounded familiar. I'm glad you brought that up.
And the winning pitchers were Xavier Rivas in game 1. He went to Portage. Wyatt Phillips, game 2, he went to Indian Creek. And then Logan Peterson was the winning pitcher in game 3.
Nice.
And you want to hear about Southern Indiana? Or
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You know, okay. They started out kind of slow. Have they made any progress?
Well, they got it rolling because they won all 3 games. They beat Young Harris, which is in Georgia. Young Harris, Georgia. That's the town. Won 19-6 Friday, 11-4 Saturday, and 10-8 today. Borden, Lucas Manu had a weekend. He had 6 RBIs in the first game.
Wow.
And he scored 4 runs yesterday.
And you said he's a Borden Braves guy?
He's a Borden Brave.
Yep.
In that second game, Adam Wildman had 3 runs driven in. He's Evansville Mater Dei grad. Terre Haute South Vigo's Ethan Hunter. He scored 4 runs. I mean, they scored they scored 40 runs in 3 games. So
wow.
Offense was a thing there. Tracy Archuleta wasn't if they were bunting, they were getting on, and then the big boppers were knocking them in.
I was looking real quick, going back to the Big Ten. I forgot to mention this. Ty Gill, a freshman for Purdue, and a pinch hitter, and it was his first at bat, kind of like what Jeff was talking about last week about the Shank kid from I can't remember where he was from, leading off in college with a big fly, and Ty did that this week for Purdue.
From Valparaiso.
Yeah, Valpo. And I'll tell you just real quick while I'm thinking about that, coaches, and especially high school coaches, it's coming up. What we're doing, you probably saw me tag that hashtag BAI this week. I've been using that, or if you just want to tag our Twitter page, which you see up the top right of your screen there, Home Plate BAI. So high school coaches, college coaches, media people, fans, I don't care who you are, you want to get on this show, we'll post your video, just post it online and make sure you tag us. Use the hashtag BAI this week, or just tag our Twitter page, Home Plate BAI, and we want to make sure we're covering everything because it is with so many schools. We're trying to cover a lot of schools here in the show. So make sure you tag us to get us on the show. Guys, let's move into D3 here. We got a few minutes. Let's go to D3 NAI and JUCO, and let's talk about anything going on in that scene this week before we move on. The only thing I had for the HCAC, and I think this was the game that Jeff was talking about last week for the kid that had the home run and first at bat. Anderson in the HCAC, if by my records, was the only team that's had any games yet. They started out 3 games against Swanee down in Tennessee. They won the first one 4-0, then lost the next 2, 1-2 and 1-8. I don't have any other scores yet for the HCAC.
This is the HCAC. I'm sorry. DePaul is in the HCAC.
Well, I know. I get that mixed up too. They've changed over the years so much. But let's keep going with D3 there with some of the other conferences. Keep going.
Well, DePaul, they lost to North Central, which is Naperville, Illinois, 6-3 Saturday, and they beat Wilmington, Ohio, 16-0 earlier today. and they were supposed to play Blackburn of Illinois in the afternoon, and I don't know what happened there. But in that Wilmington game, Cameron Allen and Brian May drove in 3 runs, and Alan May and Kyle Boyer all scored 3 runs.
I'm going back as you're talking about this. I'm going back on some things I missed. We were talking about that Evansville game. I got to give a shout out to Nick Smith, the Boonville high school grad. He had 4 innings pitched for Evansville. They scored 2 runs on him, but he had 2 Ks. So for his first outing, pretty good. So I want to give a shout out to him. That was Nick Smith, the Boonville grad, with his debut for the Aces down in Evansville. Steve, I'm bringing things all over the place here. Let's go back from my sidetrack and back to the D3. Any other D3 action before we talk about NAIA and JUCO?
No, there's no other games. They're going to be playing games this week. Some of them getting in action. Hanover's supposed to be at Center Kentucky on Tuesday, and several other teams are playing on Friday and Saturday. As a matter of fact, some of those games are at Grand Park or Bishop Chatard in Indianapolis. So if you're in central Indiana, you might be able to bundle up, catch some D3 baseball.
I was just going to say, Dan, that Wabash College is at Grand Park this coming weekend. So they've got 4 games like Steve was mentioning, I'm not sure what the weather's going to be. I know maybe a few snow flurries or something Thursday, but folks, you can bundle up and go out and support these schools.
Yeah, Manchester's going to be there too. I don't know if it'd be an ideal situation, make a longer day and a colder day. If they don't play at this exact same time, they might play one after the other.
Who's Wabash playing this weekend there?
Wabash has got Heidelberg University Friday at 4. They're playing Hope College Saturday at 2, North Central College Saturday at 5:30, and then Sunday at 11 a.m. they're playing Baldwin Wallace University, all at Grand Park. Okay.
Another sidetrack. I want a question for you guys there, and I can't his name. There's a kid from Michigan State with an Indiana tie, Tomasic.
Hunter Tomasic or Tomasic or
where I can't think what high school he went to though.
Lake Central, I believe.
Was it Lake Central? Okay, he had 8 Ks for Michigan State this week in a win over UNLV. So I wanted to give a shout out.
He was a JUCO bandit until Michigan State picked him up. He was at South Suburban, which is in South Holland, Illinois. That's in the Chicago suburbs.
Another Damon Lux. He's with Duke now. More Indiana ties. I can't think the high school he played for. It's going to come to me. I'm going to look it up here while we're doing But he had a big fly for Duke this week in a big win. I'm just kind of looking through these scores here real quick before we move on. So let's go to NAIA. You mentioned a little bit about IU Southeast. Any action with Taylor, IU Wesleyan, Indiana Wesleyan, or any of the Fort Wayne schools or any of the other NAIAs to speak so far? I think I have. I'll look it up here.
Yes, Taylor, I think, won 3 of 4 against Siena Heights. They went to Hoover, Alabama to play. Siena Heights is in Michigan. I know that they split the doubleheader yesterday and they swept it on Friday.
And I'm looking up here real quick. Let's take a look at this. Let me bring this over to my screen, and this is the current, and you guys probably can't see this, or maybe you can. This is the 2022 NAIA ratings. Now this is kind of early, and matter of fact, they don't have the preseason Monday, November 1st. That was just preseason, but that's what I wanted to look at here real quick. And looking at this, what I wanted to show was, now this is how it ended last year and preseason. So they've got IU Southeast. IU Southeast started out 0-3. Then they won a couple this week. They still got a preseason ranked 7 there, and then Indiana Wesleyan, I believe, is on here too. I'm looking for it.
Right there, 17th last week, 15th ranked 15th.
There we go. That was, of course, this is preseason, but the only reason I wanted to show you this is, something we talked about in the show a while back, and that is that the NAIA scene in Indiana is strong. So, it's, something to watch for. If you're a baseball fan, you know, you need to look up the NAIA schools in Indiana because it is some strong baseball. And we have some of the best NAIA coaches in the country. And that's not Hardy the Hat Guy, the Uber fan saying that. That is coaches from across the country that are saying that. You've got Kip McWilliams, who's taken, Indiana Tech to the Lewiston a few times. You've got Ben Reel, who was in the College World Series last year, not the final game, but so this is some teams to watch. I didn't see a lot in the JUCO action. I know it's now called Marion College of Ancilla. Now I'm going to call it Ancilla College, the rest of my life, but it's Marion College of Ancilla now, and Coach Woodridge is no longer there. But I think they started out 0-3. I have not heard on Vincennes or Ivy Tech Fort Wayne. Anything going on in those, or we're just going to push that to next week before we go to our final segment here.
They were supposed to, and Marion's Ancilla was supposed to play at Vincennes today, actually, and mix it up with South Suburban, but I hadn't heard what happened there, and I don't know if the weather got them. Although it's nicer in Vincennes than it is in the northern part of the state, so they've been playing some baseball down.
Well, I got scores here. So Ancilla got beat by Vincennes 15-5, and then turned around and got beat 17-3 by South Suburban College. And then they're going to go ahead and play a doubleheader tomorrow against South Suburban College and Vincennes University again. So they have 2 games tomorrow.
Well, I'll tell you guys, as we move forward the rest of the season, this early season stuff, especially for junior colleges, I don't want to say the wins don't matter, and I may be misspeaking here, but the JUCO element has a very unique aspect to it in baseball because, and this is why I want to emphasize the JUCO scene in Indiana. If you're a young student athlete, and we'll talk about this on our high school season preview show coming up here in a few weeks. If you're a young student athlete in Indiana, and maybe your grades aren't there yet, or maybe your game, you're projectable, to use that word that Chris taught me a while back. Your game's not quite there yet, but you love the game. I want you to consider the junior colleges in Indiana, because their job is to prepare you to take your game to the next level. And there are, so it's kind of like a summer league, if you will, in one context anyway, in that a lot of it is about the individual. It's about that individual getting better so that he can take his game to the next level. It is a great option for kids that they don't want to stop playing, but they want to get their academics and they want to get their game to a level where they can succeed and really take it even further after those JUCO years. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Dan, I think nowadays JUCO is less about grades and more about, there's a few reasons. There's several benefits to JUCO. One, you get great money.
Mm-hmm.
You get your education, your all your prerequisites done,
and for practical a lot of guys, education too. Yeah.
Yes, for a lot of guys, they have one skill that's keeping them from being at a much higher level, and then for other guys, they simply want to get drafted sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a story. There was a guy from Huntington North High School, Brett Wiley. This would have been, in the mid-2000s, who went to the University of Evansville, had a great freshman year, left Evansville, went JUCO, and then got drafted. And the only reason he went Evansville to JUCO was so he could get drafted sooner. So the JUCO scene, you got JUCOs in Illinois that'll pound Division I schools.
Yeah. Because
some of them are full scholarships, so every guy's getting money. And they're talented out the wazoo, and they're just looking to get drafted sooner.
Yep.
So I think that, in the past, JUCO was where the guys who weren't necessarily good students went. I don't really think that's the main reason anymore. I think it's a lot of other reasons are more prevalent than low academics.
Right, you're right, and that is a very good point. You look at Wabash Valley Junior College over there, and I mean,
Oh my
man,
gosh,
life, they are solid, and I'm talking solid in a comparison against all levels of baseball. And you're right. I mean, people go to some of these JUCOs, they're not going there to get their grades where they want it. Obviously, they're getting the academics, but they're going there.
And people don't realize some of the best JUCO in the country is in Illinois.
Yeah. Yep.
There's about 10 JUCOs over there that are just lights out. Matter of fact, Kankakee, which their pitching coach is a Northfield grad, Bryce Schaefer, who drafted by the Cubs out of Valpo. They won the national championship a few years ago. They got some Indiana kids over there. I mean, they're absolutely loaded.
Yep. Guys, before we got a special coming up here, and we're looking forward just to kind of wrap up our college review here. It's early in the season. Going forward, kind of some of our goals. Number one is, I talked to the Stambazzi this week up in Wabash, and I know Mark just talked to, who did Mark talk to this week on the radio?
Jim Shevlin.
Jim Shevlin, right. Two big names in sports radio because, don't forget, we want to promote anybody who's promoting baseball in our state. So we got the chance to talk to them, and we've got some big things on the horizon of our coverage of college and high school baseball coming up. Early in the season right now, so we didn't get too fancy, but some great coverage, guys. I appreciate it. As we move forward to our last segment, man, what a great time this was. Steve and Jeff were in it, and this is just another example, guys, of how difficult it was for me to edit this video down to a decent, time frame, because I think we talked for an hour and a half. And so I'm going to have the full episode up on the web. But before we show this episode where we got to talk to some great authors who have written books about baseball players in Indiana, or they're from Indiana. Jeff and Steve specifically, because you guys were on there. Any pre-thoughts before we start the playback on this interview we had with these guys?
Well, I can just say that I was just surprised to bits that these guys, I mean, as knowledgeable as they were, and they're from the state of Indiana. I mean, you just don't stop and think about guys writing about baseball in Indiana. They were very, very knowledgeable.
Lou Friedman on there has written more than 100 books. I mean, that blows me away. I knew that. I knew he had a lot. That's probably just his baseball books. He's written about other subjects too. So he's prolific.
And I didn't edit it out when you said that on the show. I purposely kept that in there because I think your exact quote was, "I don't think I've ever even heard of anybody who's written this many books." Before I hit play on this to watch that recording, I want to just give a quick tip of the cap to Steve. If you look over Steve's left shoulder there, if you can see it, that is a slice above, and that is the history of the LaPorte Slicers from the legacy years, going back to Ken Schreiber when they won all those championships, and Steve got to spend a lot of time one-on-one with the great Ken Schreiber before he passed, to put together that book. And Steve, you were also instrumental in another big book. It's and I'm getting the title wrong here, but basically the history of baseball from Indiana, high school baseball in Indiana, up to what year was it, Steve?
2000.
To 2000.
Hitting and hurling in the heartland.
That's right, and that was
that's the concise.
And I got both of those. Matter of fact, I think, Steve, I got that book before I even met you. And then the fact that I got to meet you was just that much more special. Because I've said it a few times. I'm just excited that all you guys are a part of this, and Steve, with your what you've done to preserve the baseball scene in Indiana cannot go unsaid, and that's kind of the big reason why we wanted to get these guys on the show. And it goes back to what we were talking about with Sweet Lou at the beginning. Sweet Lou there's given blood, sweat, and tears putting together these stats from historically in Indiana. And it's the preservation of that which is so important, and that's what these guys have done in their books. But also, and you'll hear them talk about it, but it's just so special because it's not just about the book for them. These guys are not rolling in the dough from money from selling these books. They're doing it because of the people that they meet, the people that they invest their time in. One of the things, I don't think it's in the episode, but we asked them, how exciting is it, or those times when you're writing about specific people where you really empathize with these people. You feel like you're part of their life, even though they may have passed 50 years ago. You just become a part of their life just from doing the research on it. So I could talk about this stuff all day. Guys, I'm going to do the final act when we're all said and done here, but let's listen as we talk to some of the best authors from Indiana. Here we go.
From near a little town called Milford, Indiana, which is between Warsaw and Goshen in the north central part of the state. I grew up on my grandfather's farm there, so an Indiana boy, very much. Went to Indiana University and did my undergrad there. Went on to the doctorate at the University of Texas at Austin. Went into book publishing as an editor, and at some point during that time, really started increasing my knowledge of baseball history, I guess, which led to the book that has led why I'm on this panel, biography of Oscar Charleston.
My name is Jay Daniel. I spent about 20 years in sports television. I grew up in Ohio, Southwest Ohio, and went to Ohio University, grew up in the Cincinnati area, and then worked in sports television for about 20 years in Chicago and Tampa, a little bit in Cincinnati, and then I ended up in Indianapolis, working for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar Series. I'd always been an avid baseball fan and baseball book fan. And I was actually laid off at IMS in 2010, and I thought that would be among the four things that brought. It also gave me an opportunity to give myself the time to actually write a book. So I wrote my first book about the 1980 baseball season, and that came out a couple of years ago. And I'm currently working on a new book about 1982, which hopefully, fingers crossed, will be out this year. And I'm very happy to see Chris Lambs on this call because he was definitely helpful in getting me on my way to getting my first book published as well. So I'm good to see you, Chris.
Well, it's good to see you too, Jay, and thank you. Okay, I'm Chris Lamb. I'm the chair of the Department of Journalism and Public Relations at IUPUI. I grew up in Southwest Ohio as well. I grew up there outside of Dayton, Ohio. I've written 12 books and 5 of them on race, sports, and the media, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the Oscar Charleston book.
Kevin Worthwine. I grew up in Evansville, Indiana. Started watching baseball when we made a Double-A Southern League team here in '66. It was about the worst time for the minor. At the end of the worst time in the minor leagues, and we didn't hang on to it, but it was always the team that got me introduced to baseball and got me back to writing. And I grew up there. I went to Butler University and was a journalism major and wrote for small newspapers and Saturday Evening Post publication and did some advertising copywriting. And then I was starving, so I changed careers for 40 years. As I retired, I got back to writing and wrote my first book, and it came out in March 2020.
And we have one of the most prolific authors I've never heard of on this panel. We haven't heard from him too much yet. That's Lou Friedman. We didn't forget about you, Lou. You've written over 100 books, I believe. Can you tell us about yourself, please?
I decided when I was about 12 years old I wanted to be a writer. And at that time, it was to write fiction. And I ended up working for my hometown weekly paper and a school paper, which kind of steered me into this next 55 years. Followed.
Who's your favorite author of somebody who wrote a book that wasn't you?
Well, Roger Kahn, The Boys of Summer was the first great baseball book I can remember reading. I'm going to hold one up. This, which I'm using a lot now, unbelievable book underneath.
Riley.
I'm sure James A. Riley. And my latest project is Blackball in Evansville, and I go to this daily. It's 952 pages, and it's got every detail imaginable. The foreword is written by Monty Irvin, who one of the all-time greats.
I think Bill James is the greatest baseball writer, and all apologies to Roger Kahn and others. He's thought of the stats guy. It's funny. You get pigeonholed as the guy who fathered the analytics revolution. The guy's pros, a great baseball historian, and then he's just a lot of sense. I love his way he intelligently challenged conventional wisdom. And he's curmudgeonly, not like that. So I like these cranky sometimes, So Bill James, and then the Negro Leagues, I would just point out two authors that are worthy of mention. John Holloway, really mainly for the books of oral interviews he did with former Negro Leagues players. He just did a great service to everyone who writes in this area. And then Jules Teichel's Baseball's Great Experiment, I think, is the greatest book on the integration, at least that I've read, on the integration saga around Jackie and Rancher Rickey. So I mentioned those guys.
One of the interesting facts I saw on Oscar Charleston, and you mentioned the Bill James, the Moneyball guy, for the people listening in that don't know that name. That's kind of how he's most known for. But Bill James actually said, and I know I'm teaching you a stat, Jeremy, you already know, Bill James actually is one that put Oscar Charleston as the number 4 player of all time. It's just an interesting tie in there. And, Bill James says that, I'm going to listen.
That's why I ended up writing a book. I mean, when I was going through the new historical baseball app, and I saw the rankings, I was like, who the hell is Oscar Charleston? I had no idea. And it felt really bad being from Indiana and a big sports guy and together with friends. Hey, who's your all-time Indiana starting 5, basketball? Who are the greatest football players over the state? Baseball, I knew Gil Hodges, Carl Orskin, Don Mattingly, and then I learned more about Max Carey and Roush and some of the other Hall of Famers, but I did not know who Charleston was. And it's only because of James that I went down the old rabbit hole that led me to write that book.
Well, Jill's Teichel had the most important impact on me as someone who was interested in doing research, and he's in baseball's great experiment. Probably had the most profound impact on my life as somebody who writes about race in baseball. I think in the category of novelist, Bernard Malamud for The Natural, and Roger Angell for nonfiction. And then Ring Lardner for both fiction and nonfiction.
All worthy people to be reading.
You talked a little bit about your favorite authors, but is there anybody else that comes to mind? You must have have a few.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever, specifically, listed it like that. I will say Chris had a wonderful selection of quality people, and other people mentioned Roger Kahn, who had also The Boys of Summer was pretty special. Jane Levy does a great job when she undertakes something. Jane was a feature writer with the Washington Post when I was with the Philly Inquirer decades ago. So, which is the only time I ever came across her in real life. She had first-person research with Mantle.
Yeah, there you go.
When she wrote, I remember her writing about eating with them and things like that. So I'm not sure she's number one, but I think she's done some really notable things.
Certainly to echo Chris's sentiments, Roger Angel is a guy that I grew up reading when I was younger. Peter Golenbach, to me, wrote the Ball Four of my generation with the Bronx Zoo. That book, to me, had just a tremendous impact as a young baseball fan to read that book and find out, all the amazing things that went on behind the scenes, or at least amazing when you're 16 years old and you read it. And I think the big person for me more recently is Dan Epstein. And to me, Dan is the master of telling stories of a season and weaving in pop culture elements. And that's what I tried to do in my first two books. And it's challenging, And Dan is very, very good at it, and Dan has also been very, very good to me and helping me along. And so Dan is definitely on that list as well. He's a good guy, and his books are fantastic.
I especially like guys like Jason Stark.
Yeah,
Perkins, but one of my favorite guys growing up, and I'm a sports writer and I've been writing for a long time, is Dave Kinder. And I always cut out his columns on the Sporting News. He's written some baseball books. I was amazed at how he could take two subjects or three subjects that don't seem to have anything to do with one another, and he weaves them together seamlessly. So that takes some talent in my mind.
Learning everything. I started out just wanting to write about my favorite team, that AA team, and I said, well, maybe I better do a little history about the sport in the city before I do that. And there literally was never any written by any. And I went back to 1865 and really went through the first 100 years of organized ball in Evansville, Indiana. And it was pretty extraordinary to find out everything that happened. I mean, through the late 1800s. Through 1970, everything was new.
Somebody has a line, right? That, I forget who it was. That I don't enjoy writing. I enjoy having written. The writing is hard. I enjoy the research very much. The writing, when it's flowing, is a lot of fun, but as you all know, it's not always flowing, and there's a lot to do. When you're writing, it sounds like everybody here is writing history and or biography in my case. And when you're doing that, you can't just make stuff up. This is fiction. You have to state the facts. You have to get to primary sources. You have to make judgment calls on how you're going to deal with discrepancies. I enjoy all of that. It's hard. But getting into the primary sources and doing the research and doing notes, I like that. The writing is harder, but having written is fantastic.
I think that for me, the big part of it was that I was a huge Phillies fan in 1980 when they won the World Series, but I was living in Ohio and I was in 8th grade. And so my knowledge of that team came from, watching a handful of games on television whenever they played the Reds or whenever they were on the Saturday afternoon game of the week, and then watching the playoffs in the World Series. So for me, it was about going back and actually learning a lot about that season. Literally today, I'm writing about 1982, and with the Cardinals and the Brewers, so a central side theme thread throughout the book is beer and baseball. And like I said, I like to weave pop culture stuff in. And so, in 1982, Rocky II came out, and Survivor did the theme song, and I was writing about, the Eye of the Tiger, and my editor said, man, we need something to tie this back into baseball or to beer. And so I was researching some stuff today, and it turns out that I didn't know this, to your point, the guy who was the lead singer for Survivor was the guy who was the singer in the Budweiser Real Men and Genius campaign. And that was all I needed to reel it back in and talk about baseball. So, it happens every day. We research, and I know all you guys have done this, but you're researching and you're going, wow, that's cool. And whether or not it makes the book is secondary. It's just a fun thing to come across.
It happens every time I sit down and dig deeper. It happens daily. it's just these aha moments. Oh, I can't believe I found this, and it can change the whole direction of where I'm going. But yeah, I'm dealing. I think, like Chris said, I'm dealing mostly with dead guys and dead people, and in areas where there wasn't a lot of reporting done, especially in Negro League type stuff. I mean, if you would stumble across something that is a oh wow moment so frequently, but you have to go so deep. So it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It probably happens more often when you're doing stuff that people haven't, the untraveled ground. The book I'm working on right now is 11 and 12-year-olds in Charleston, South Carolina. The first black little league team faces racism and they can't play, and they win tournaments on forfeit, and they're finally told they can't play. It's all done, and their souls are scarred forever. And this story becomes big. It becomes a big deal for a few weeks, and then I find that. The New York Daily News does a story and they interview Jackie Robinson about this. So now it goes full circle because the first book I wrote about was on Jackie Robinson, and I've written a lot about Jackie Robinson. So now I go from these four kids who are still living, and they talk about what it meant to them as 12-year-olds in 1955 and the impact it had on their lives, and how they still wake up, how they still sob when they think about it. And now it goes to Jackie Robinson talking about what an awful thing it was. So I think that's a great question, and it's just that's the thing that keeps me going as a writer is your question.
Every book, at least one thing that pops up that I never expected. I was doing a book with I called it the second Yankees dynasty. Really, which is post Babe Ruth into World War II, when the Yankees won 5 in a row. But I was the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I came across a little tidbit story and then a classic, unbelievable photograph of Lou Gehrig dressed as Tarzan. And he had a movie tryout. He had a screen test to play Tarzan. That was something that I certainly had never knew about before. And the picture was priceless. Couldn't use the picture. Could never get that. It didn't really fit so much with the story, but just knowing that such a picture existed, it was, and laughing so much about it. I was like yelling to the librarian, saying, "Have you ever seen this?" That kind of thing. So somewhere or another, I think I got the tidbit that he tried out for Tarzan in there, but we couldn't use the photo. But that is a classic photo you could probably find online, and worth the chuckle.
I'm thinking of you, Chris, and that story right there. Just you telling me the topic of it, that story has a heartbeat. Who's one person you wrote about that really, you really got into their life and it affected you?
Well, it would be Jackie Robinson, I think. My dad got a Jackie Robinson autograph back in the 50s. He was in Brooklyn, and it was a rain out, and he saw Jackie Robinson. And he came home when I was maybe 7 or 8. He showed me the autograph, and when it was time to put it away, I couldn't find it. And so I had this incredible feeling of guilt. And when I was at the University of Tennessee and working for a radio station, I interviewed Hank Aaron, and I never ever asked anybody for an autograph that I interviewed until this time, because I felt so awful about the fact that I had lost this Jackie Robinson autograph. So Hank Aaron signed it, and I brought it home and gave it to my dad, and he said, "This is great. What's this for?" I said, "Because I lost your Jackie Robinson autograph." And he said, "No, you didn't." And he goes and brings it back. and he gives me my dad passed away about a year and a half ago. I am hearing autographs. They come together in their own shoebox.
Well, as a journalist and working for a newspaper, it's really unethical to ask anybody for their autograph. But as an author, especially if you're telling their story, it's a little bit different. You've been hanging out with the person, you've been in their home, you're telling their biography, so it's not as, not as verboten, I guess. But there's been 2 times that I probably violated loosely the journalistic aspect to ask them for an autograph. And one was with Bear Bryant. And I had breakfast with him in Tallahassee, Florida, near the end of his career. And he was, if anybody has traveled through the South, I call Crystal's hamburger chain the McDonald's of the South. And when he was young and poor, he ate there 3 times a day. So now that he was famous, he was endorsing Crystal's. And I had a biography of his, and I brought it. He signed it for me. And it's true, I never did see him again. It wasn't like I covered him on a regular basis, so I didn't feel bad. And Buck O'Neill was the other one, really. I had an interview with him for a project I was doing, and that was an author project. So, and at the Negro Leagues Hall of Fame, I had him sign the book also. I felt I didn't feel guilty about those.
I've been doing this a long time, since I was 16, and I can't do anything else, so I might as well stay with this. It's real difficult. I used to think writing was fun and reporting was a grind, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, writing is drudgery, and reporting can be so much fun. And you got to go, and you just have to keep looking and looking and looking. My latest book takes place in Charleston, South Carolina, and that required me to go to Charleston 7 or 8 times, and the newspaper wasn't available online, so I'd have to go to the library and look carefully at it. And you just, it's every day could be Christmas as far as when you're looking for stuff. And it's just, it's so easy to make mistakes, and you have to double check and triple check things, and you're never really done until it's delivered on your front door.
You know, when you're writing about baseball history, you're breaking news. I mean, I'm writing a book about the 1980 season. I don't think there's anyone who read that book that read till the end to find out who won the World Series. And so you go through and you're just trying to find, like you guys talk about, you're trying to find that nugget. And I actually, for this book, purposely didn't talk to anyone because I wanted to keep it all contemporaneous. And just read all those old newspaper articles. And I heard that's been a criticism of some of the book, or of the only book that I've written so far. And I've seen that as a criticism of other books. But I think that's legitimate to some degree. But on the other hand, there's no way that someone who makes that criticism has read all the source material we've read. There's no way that someone has gone through and read all the Philadelphia papers, all the San Diego papers, all the Chicago papers. Oh, I knew all that stuff. I mean, that's just not the case. And so we've done that legwork, and I think that's the fun part about taking all that information and weaving it into a story, especially a story that everyone knows the end of, and still trying to make it compelling.
Do your peers try to rewrite your book for you?
Well, basically, it's interesting because everything that I had written, I had sent to people and asked them, give me your honest feedback on this. Don't tell me, yeah, it's great, because, that's nice to hear, but it's not going to make me a better writer. It's not going to make the book better. And then I sent my finished manuscript into University of Missouri Press, and they sent it out to peer reviewers that they chose. And I definitely got honest feedback from those guys. And so it was absolutely a case of be careful what you wish for. Because when I got that back, I was sort of really taken aback. But then I also thought, when I stepped back and sort of tried to remove some of the emotions of it, I thought, well, the things that they're saying have merit and they need to be addressed. And so I was thankful for that process. On the whole, but it's the classic case of it's not what you said, how you said it in certain cases. So they weren't super nice with some of the things that they said, but I think it will make for a better book.
I guess you got competition for ideas, I think, whether they're from journalists or just other baseball fans. All of us could come up with the same idea, a variation of it or something. Jeremy hasn't said anything about what he's working on. But this season, sort of a complimentary book, if you want to call it that. I mean, Lonnie Wheeler is the last thing he ever wrote, the biography of Cool Papa Bell, that I thought was great. That started off reading this season, and you kind of wondered how nobody had done that before. but it was because I think a lot of it had to do with the same difficulties of research that Jeremy might have faced with Oscar Charleston.
Yeah, most people, Jeff, I think, there's no money in writing books like this. So you're not getting competition from people who are trying to make a living. So it is more that, especially when you go down the road on a project, I mean, you're in. So if somebody else is doing it, there's going to be 2 books on that topic.
And I ran into that with Ernie Banks.
Yeah, I bet.
I had 3, and then we ended up having 3 at once. And that was when I started it. Ron Rappaport, who was a longtime journalist in Chicago and Los Angeles, had made it known he was writing Ernie Banks' book. And then he dropped it. And I know Ron. He even sent me an email and told me, I'm not doing the Ernie book anymore. And then Ernie died. And he wrote a big Chicago Magazine story on him. And I thought that was the end. And then there's a guy named Doug Wilson who writes some baseball books, who lives in this town in Columbus. So he works like 3 miles from here. We eat lunch once in a while. And we went out to lunch, and I said, hey, what are you working on? He said, an Ernie Banks book. And by that time, I had already turned mine in. So we had 3 Ernie Banks books, and believe me, I'm not claiming mine's the best. I think Ron Rappaport's was the best. He had the most time in Ernie. But I mean, that was sort of all unpredictable, because Ron had started it earlier, dropped it, gave up on it. I don't know how Doug got into it, but at one time, I think I was the only person who knew there were going to be 3.
What are the chances? Is it 2?
I knew the other 2 guys.
Indiana.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
I would think too, to piggyback on what Jeremy said too, you can come up with what you think is a great idea for a book. The other question, again, to your point, Lewis, who's going to buy it, both in terms of the publisher and in terms of the public. I mean, I know when I was pitching my first book, I got multiple responses from agents that basically said, I think this is a good idea, and I think you can write well enough, but I don't think I can sell it. And I think, and it's been, I don't, compared to many of the people on this panel, most, if not all of the people on this panel, I don't know really anything about the publishing business. But it seems to me that when you're writing nonfiction and Spaceball books specifically, how well you write is secondary to how well you can sell a book. And the fact that, so when was the last time you heard someone say, yeah, I really like that biography of, ex-baseball player because it was so well written. I mean, that just doesn't happen. It's all about how many copies you can sell. And that's not to say that you don't want to write well. I'm sorry?
How prominent the player is.
Exactly, right. And how prominent it is, and honestly, in many cases, what market did they play in? If Oscar Charleston is white and he played for the Yankees, your book sells, well, first of all, it would have already been written 30 years ago. But it also would have sold
a New York publisher.
Exactly, right. And so that's the other part of it. I mean, it's just, so that's the frustrating part. But again, that's why you can go to publishers like McFarland, or some of these other publishers are self-published. And the threshold for entry is low, and then you can say, I mean, I reached a point where I said, I'm just going to write this damn book, and if my mom's the only one who buys a copy of it, I can say at least I've written a book.
I did think a long time ago that I was going to have a bestseller that was going to make money.
Oh, yeah.
I was working full time for a newspaper the entire time, so the book writing was a hobby.
Well, here's my go-to story. My first book came out, and I thought I was all excited to get my first check, right? And we had made a plan to take a family trip to Ireland. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the base. I got about enough money for gas money to Dublin, Ohio.
Yeah,
my first check. So,
unfortunately, I have it from McFarland today for like 12 bucks.
Yeah, mine was 20. So, yeah, exactly. I'm right there with you.
And I've enjoyed the heck out of what I've written. Yeah. And the time I spent and the people I met.
Yeah.
I will say that. And the research has been fun and some of those experiences. So I've chalked that up to the other values in life rather than remuneration and for most of it.
And there's value to that. I mean, that's important. I mean, it's not that none of us are going to retire when our next royalty check comes in. But it is fun. And it's a passion project because it has to be.
Now that I know what it is.
Yeah. I mean, you spend 2-3 years working on a project, you better love it.
Yeah, people spend $20,000 a year playing golf.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't spend nearly that much writing a book. So it's the same kind of, and I'm usually in as bad a mood after I spend 3 hours writing than I am playing 3 hours of golf. So it's, but you have to consider it a hobby, and then it's fine. If I had to rely on this for my total income, it wouldn't work.
Guys, what do you think? And I hope I did justice on the editing of that, because you guys know, you were there. We could have had this thing last the whole show, and that's why I am going to put the full interview up on the web. Before we wrap things up with the final out, any thoughts on that, or on this week in general, guys? Steve, I think you're on mute. There you go.
Rookie mistake.
There we go.
You did a wonderful job with the editing, and I love the fact that these guys, some of them knew each other, some of them didn't, but the way they interacted, and they had so much in common because of writing books, and just because, they love baseball. Yeah, it just flowed as a conversation. That's what I liked about it. Jeff?
I just have to say, whoever came up with the subject was brilliant, because I thoroughly enjoyed all the authors. I'm going to be looking for. I'm not much of a reader, but I'm going to probably look for some books from these guys, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, that was our co-host Steve there, of course, that came up with that idea, and just what a gold idea that was. And you know what? I'm using that as our topic as we go to today's final out, as we wrap things up. If you're just tuning in on this episode of February 20th, this is episode 5 of Baseball This Week in Baseball Across Indiana. If you're just tuning in, boy, it was a good full show. Make sure you go back to baseballacrossindiana.com to watch our full episode. For today's final out, the topic is ownership. And hearing these authors, one of the things I want to emphasize is the amount of research they have to do. By now, it's 2022, we all know that once something goes on the internet, it's always going to be there. But when you put it in a book, especially when it's biography, like a lot of these guys are talking about, it's more. You become an owner of the legacy of the story you are telling. Your work now becomes an authority of truth. So there is ownership to their work. So my final out thought is actually a question. When participating in something, and I mean anything, ask yourself, how much ownership are you taking of it? Because here's the thing. There are times when you don't have to take ownership. But absolutely everything you do, your involvement falls into one of 4 categories, and each are really 3 categories, and then the 4th is the category you don't want to be in. The first is you're not involved, and that's okay. You walk away. Something's not your thing, you walk away. Number 2, you're just a fan, like me. I've always said I'm nothing but a fan. Your investment, if you're a fan, is based solely on entertainment. Number 3, on the level of involvement, you are hands-on involved. And if that's the case, you are an owner. This leaves only one other option. That is, you think you're involved, but you're not taking ownership of it. If this is the case, you're not involved. You're in the way. So to wrap it up, in everything you do, ask yourself, am I involved by taking ownership of my role, or am I just pretending? Because maybe I don't think my role is important enough. If you want to be involved on your baseball team, know that your role will always be changing as long as you're putting forth the effort. Therefore, whatever your role is at any given moment, own it. Own it something isn't always having the best average or the highest exit velo, but owning it always requires you to stay engaged and always needs you to be looking for the opportunity where you can do what you do and be prepared for it. High school kids, don't wait for the season. Don't wait for your chance. Own it right now. That's our final out. Folks, we'll see you next week as we keep moving along. Our high school preview show's coming up. See us at baseballacrossindiana.com. Thank you, folks.